Welcome to this ordinary meeting of Hunters Hill Council number 4456. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respect to their elders past and present.
We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, to discharge the duties entrusted to us, to the common good and in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please have a seat. So welcome everybody, and I don't think we have any apologies tonight. We welcome. We had a forewarning that we should have everybody here tonight, so that's good. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest? I move to the confirmation of the previous minutes. Councillor Williams. Councillor Miles. Councillor Williams.
Can I make a correction that I believe is a correction? On page 4.
Page 4.
Dealing with 12.1.
12.1. Yes?
I appreciated the opportunity at the last meeting to be able to discuss the general business aspect of briefings. But I believe I made it very clear that it not only should appear in the business papers, but should also be presented at council meetings.
You did.
Which doesn't reflect...
And you mentioned two things in particular as I recall.
Yes, but that's not reflected in the minutes.
No.
So I think it needs to say more than just the business papers, which it happens now. I don't think. What I said at the last meeting was that it should also be presentations to the council, so that we get the level of transparency and the opportunity for the community to be informed as the councillors are on some of these important issues, such as asset management, how we approach it, sort of thresholds, and the things that we see as important for the community to be aware of how we do our business.
Yes.
That's equally as important as the decisions we make, I think. It's the basis on those decisions. In relation to the question I asked about shop exhaust fans and the impact on residents in Boronia Park, I guess what is being said here is that it's not a council issue or problem, is that right?
Through, that's correct, Councillor.
So there's nothing council can do to assist the resident when a DA or whatever produces an undesirable outcome from, which is, if you've got noisy exhaust fans, there must be a problem.
We have had discussions only recently with the owners of the tenant of the adjoining property as well. So we will have further discussions to see how much we can assist.
Yeah, well, I'd hate to be living alongside fans. The other issue on 13.4, the unreasonable noise associated with garbage collection at the large housing, what they call these days, social housing complex, Myers Avenue there. By any stretch of the imagination, 3 o'clock in the morning or 3:30 in the morning is a problem. But what the council's response here is that, again, the report doesn't really get to the nub of the things. It's not a busy street. It's not a busy area. It's a very underutilised area. So moving the garbage contractors around as a result of a more timely approach for the residents is achievable. So I don't get the sense there that council has really got, or staff have really got the question that was being asked in mind and the answers were given. Because it could not be considered that it has to be picked up at 3 o'clock in the morning because of traffic in the area. Instead as a doornail at the time of night. Anyway, that's my questions in relation to the minutes.
Thank you. Would you like that matter to be considered further and something brought back again?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I pointed out both those issues. I don't think it answers the question I asked. Whether council can answer it is another matter, but they haven't said, except for what Mr Rufus has said, that he's not able to.
Perhaps we can bring it up at the next meeting again, just consider it again. Thank you. Councillor Crassley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a quick question actually on that 13.4 with the garbage pickup. Is that our garbage collector or is that a private contractor?
Not private.
Through you, Mayor, my understanding it's a private contractor.
It is, yeah. I thought I read it in there somewhere, but
that's right.
I just wanted for clarification from there. And then I just wanted to add another correction on page 12, item 13.6. The tree down and the broken fence in Tarban Creek. The large tree fell on New Year's Eve. I saw the fallen tree, so it was definitely down on New Year's Eve, and the fence has been like that since. And my concern is, even if Sydney Water were only notified on the 11th of February, my concern is that local kids are starting to find it quite fun, and those pieces of metal, they don't bend. And on the weekend, I saw a little cluster of boys having a ball down there, which I probably would have done when I was 11, except there wouldn't have been a fence there when I was 11.
I saw them too with a football.
Yeah. Yes. And they were down there again this afternoon helping each other climb out. So it's obviously starting to become a place to play and something to be conscious of.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got one correction as well. It relates to the amendment that I put, which is on page 2 of the minutes. The amendment, in actual fact, point 1 was identical to that was actually adopted later on. I do have in fact, I found this in my pocket this evening before I left. And,
so which item is it on page 2? It's which of those is it?
Well, it's where I've moved the amendment was seconded by Councillor Williams, and the first point. They've left some of the wording out there. The wording was actually identical. It was ultimately adopted for point 1 of the final resolution.
That's correct.
Is that the bit about the options included?
Yeah, we just wanted options put in there.
Yeah. And as I recall, Councillor Collins was okay with that in the first one, but it was the item 2 that was unhappy with.
Yeah, it's just that I would like the amendment that I put to be
sure.
As it was put.
Okay, we've got that. Thank you very much. Is there anything else related to the minutes? All right. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, against, that's carried with the amendments. Thank you. So we move to item 3.1, and we have two speakers. We have one speaker and one gentleman willing to provide support. Is that correct? All right. So I've got Mr. Daniel Restick. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Here to speak about synthetic surfaces and I guess the great what they do to the community. Let me first start by football from Football New South Wales. Football is the largest sport in the country. It is the largest sport in the state. All Saints Hunters Hill, where Ewan represents here today, they are part of the Gladesville Hornsby Association. They have over 15,000 participants. All Saints Hunters Hill has over close to 800 participants. That equates to almost 8% of the population of the Hunters Hill area that are playing in football, showing the enormity of the sport. The national average is about 4.5% to 5%, so it shows how big it is. Football New South Wales has just finished conducting a facilities audit across the entire state. We found some alarming figures. The play to pitch ratio across New South Wales is 1 to 155. In most areas in Sydney, it is above that. In fact, in the GHFA area, it is 1 to 170. And that is going to continually rise with the increase of population. We found that 55% of the fields across the state are below standard. Gladesville Reserve as being one of them. There are only 54 synthetic fields across the state, which is only 2% of the actual of all the fields. What we also found is from our calculations that within the next 20 years, with the increase of population, we're going to see football is going to be 700 pitches short across the entire state. That's with another approximately 120,000 additional football players participating in the game. Other key findings that I share with you: 41% of the fields have no irrigation or drainage. Glades Reserve is included as that one of those. There are only 12% of the change rooms in New South Wales that are female friendly. That's a frightening stat for a sport, and for sport in general, where women's sport is growing so heavily at the moment. So we need to change that. Glades Reserve, why do we need a synthetic field there? Well, I don't think it's no secret the condition of Glades Reserve during the season. It becomes a mud heap. It's rock solid. It's dirt. It's almost unsafe in some situations. Synthetic fields provide that safety for us. We're looking. It's got no irrigation. It's got no drainage. It has the inability. It's got no inability to increase with the amount of demand that's going to come forward from the population increase that we're going to see. As Mr. Mayor and Council, as you're aware, Hunters Hill is part of the Nesrock region. Nesrock conducted a study by Otium. Otium conducted the study, should I say, last year, that found that there's going to be 200,000 extra residents in the Nesrock region in the next 20 years. And at this stage, the fields in the Nesrock area are unable to cope with the demand that's going to be seen. So hence why one of the main recommendations from that report was to have synthetic fields as an option to help alleviate the pain and the issues that we're going to have in 20 years' time. That we have a lack of space.
Move to extend. Councillor Williams. Councillor Miles, please go ahead.
Thank you. The report, so here, undertake initiative, the report said to undertake an identified initiative to increase the capacity of fields using synthetic fields as an example. How many, we've got 54 synthetic fields, as I mentioned, across the state. 6 of the Nesrock councils already have a synthetic field. The 2 that don't are Hunters Hill Council and Mossman Council. Other councils across the Sydney Basin region are installing these at a fast pace. They include Hillshire Council, Northern Beaches, Sutherland Shire, Stratfield, Bayside, Campbelltown, Canterbury Bankstown just opened one only a week ago. Wollongong will about to open one in the next week. Georges River have them coming on board. So it is an issue, and and councils are dealing with it by installing synthetic fields to alleviate the issues for participation. The benefits that synthetic fields bring, climatic, they're under drought and under heavy rain, they can be played on at any time without any issues. The usage is unlimited. A natural grass field can contain 20 to 30 hours until we see deterioration. A synthetic field can see over 60 hours of usage without any deterioration. Maintenance is a lower ongoing cost of maintaining a synthetic field compared to a natural turf field. The consistency and quality of play is remarkable compared to a number of fields across the state. One of those would be Glades Reserve. It has the ability to cater for growing demand. As I said, in the inner city governments, these natural turf fields are under greater capacity pressures, and this results in increased stress levels to the natural turf. Maintenance is a key, and we're definitely not saying that this is a maintenance free, but synthetic fields need to be maintained, and that their maintenance will ensure that synthetic fields can last their full life up to 10 years, which they can. There have been some health concerns that people have mentioned in previous years. They have all been studied by the Washington Health Society, by California, and everything that's coming back from those tests has shown that there is no detrimental effect of synthetics on people's health. We know that the Premier of New South Wales, one of the main priorities of Gladys Berejiklian is to have reduce obesity rates by 5%. To do that, we need to get more people playing the game, and synthetic fields creates that opportunity to get more people playing more often, at every possible opportunity, and not having grounds closed for rain situations, which a lot of the natural turf fields are across New South Wales. Synthetic fields are a part of the solution that's going to help our sport and all the sports across the country, ensuring more kids and more adults are getting physically active. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, are there any questions, please? Councillor Craswell.
So when you were just saying about rain, so you can play when it's wet?
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, absolutely. There's a drainage system that gets installed underneath the synthetic field that captures all the water.
It's not slippery?
No, So it's actually almost, there are some clubs and sports that actually like to water the synthetic just to give it a bit of a slide. So so no issue at all. The only issue would be, the only time you'd be stopping playing on a synthetic field would be lightning.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. And the maintenance costs year on year following the installation are cheaper than natural?
Yeah, it all depends on the amount of usage. So anywhere between 15 to roughly 25,000 is the maintenance cost of a synthetic field per year. The more you use it, the more you need to maintain it, obviously. And if you maintain it correctly, you're going to get extend the period of life and get to that 10 years. Each synthetic field roughly lasts approximately 10 years. That depends on the amount of usage.
That's my question.
Yeah. So if you're using it consistently before 60 hours a week, then you're probably going to get and maintaining it properly as per the requirements, you're going to get 10 years of usage. There are a lot of examples that we can see from in Melbourne, particularly who are the leaders in synthetic surfaces. 10 years ago they installed them and simply just installed them and didn't do any maintenance, and now they're seeing the effects of those fields not being able. They're actually unusable at the moment because they haven't been maintained. So maintenance is part of the issue, and if they're maintained properly, you're going to get that longevity.
Councillor Cresswell.
Sorry, one more. Just on maintenance, is that something that has to be outsourced, or that council field staff can be trained?
Yeah, can be both. So a lot of councils are, particularly at the moment, for the first 2 years, they're getting as part of the contract, as part of the tender process, they're getting the contractor to service and maintain the field for 2 years, and then transfer that into the council to
they train them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's almost. At its simplest form, instead of mowing the synthetic field, you're brushing. You're simply using a tractor to brush the fibres.
In your presentation, you said that it was cheaper than a traditional field to maintain.
Yes.
Is that the mowing costs and
mowing? We're talking about mowing, fertilising, watering, grass replacement, etc. across the lifetime of that field.
That's great to hear. Pleased to hear that. Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Williams first. Councillor Williams first.
Oh, okay. What about security?
Yes.
It's a large area of synthetic grass.
Yes.
Do people cut it up and take it home?
No, absolutely not at all. I think that there might have been.
Because it's very isolated, the clays.
Yeah, it can be, but I haven't been privy to any information that councils are having issues with people coming in and cutting grass or access to the field or burnouts, etc. on those fields. It seems they are now. They're not I guess a random thing that occurs in a council. A lot of, as I listed those councils that are building them, they are becoming the norm now across Sydney. So people aren't going to forcefully damage them. Is what we're seeing. It's not occurring across the state.
Councillor Cresswell.
Thank you. Just still back on maintenance.
Yeah.
You mentioned a truck that brushes.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of plant investment for council to.
Yeah, or it can always be used the back of a current mower or something like that. That you might have it. It's just
adaptable.
Yeah, it's adaptable. Yeah, brush is put into the back, and it simply just brushes that surface to keep the fibres upright. Because if you don't maintain it, as I said, if you don't maintain it properly, it's quite a simple system. It's almost like the hairs stand up, and when you're constantly using, those fibres fall, and you brush against the grain to keep those fibres up and to keep that surface playable and maintained.
Thank you.
Councillor Sampson.
In the event of vandalism or some sort of unforeseen damage to the surface, is it possible to patch it?
Absolutely, yeah, no, absolutely. And we've had cases where we've actually had, I think, in the Northern Beaches Council, where they've had extreme use in certain areas. So particularly in the gold mouths, where they've been used for hours and hours on end, they can simply cut that piece out and install a new piece. It's quite easy.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors. Do I have a mover and a second?
No, there's no speaking.
Did you particularly want to speak, or were you there just to answer any queries?
I was really here if required. I'm happy to talk from a club perspective if you want to hear what this will do for.
You're welcome to if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. The advice I got was you were here to assist if necessary.
Assist if necessary, talk if necessary.
Please go ahead. And this is Mr. McLeod.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. So I'm the new president of All Saints Hunters Hill Football Club. last year, the previous president was Paul Mountain, and as you may know, Paul passed away, unfortunately, age 53 with melanoma. But one of his long-held desires was to develop Gladesville Reserve into a decent footballing field. If you go to actual Gladesville Reserve at the moment, it's very, very ordinary. And if you look on our Facebook page, where we had a Matilda come along to our presentation day last year, and you'll see pictures on there with her playing on this field, and it's just mixtures of sand and clumps of grass. When I sent out the note last night in regards to the potential funding from state, straight away got a text message back from one of the players going, "Oh, that's such good news, because that's where I busted my ankle 8 months ago." So again, from a safety perspective, this will definitely help. From a community perspective, I was out at ELS Hall last night walking my dog just at the park behind there. There was probably about 150 kids playing on the all-weather field doing soccer training. I know before it was an all-weather field, you'd get 4 or 5 people down there. So it does actually allow, to me, and especially from an All Saints perspective, it does allow the club, rather than be lots of individual teams, it actually allows us to actually become much more of a community club and actually grow our base a lot more. So for me, synthetic is an excellent opportunity for Gladesville Reserve, and I think it will help everyone in the community from a sporting perspective. And also speaking with the school at Riverside Girls and with their principal, they're very supportive of having a synthetic field there.
Good.
So I'm happy to pause there and take questions if.
Councillor Williams.
All Saints is a wonderful local community club. What would be going in there is a district facility. How would you see the balance between your needs as a local community club and the pressure that will come for other non-local organisations to make use of that facility? Because that sort of investments is going to go in. We've heard the comments about the need within the NESROC community of councils to improve and increase their sporting capacity. I could imagine that this will become a very prominent district facility, and there'll be a lot of competing demands on who gets access to it. It won't just be the same little park we've got at the moment. How would you see the club dealing and coping and ensuring it gets its fair share?
I'd like to think that we would get first option on usage, but again, I'm happy to work with whoever wants to use the facility to come to an amicable solution. Again, I'm very much, I want to put the thoughts and needs of All Saints first, but not at the expense of everyone else. So I'm not sure what other regional kind of requirements or teams would be interested.
Well, the previous speaker was talking about it being an important asset for soccer within New South Wales, let alone within the region.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just food for thought. Yeah. Like you're the big fish in the sea at the moment. Once a regional facility comes in,
I'd say from an All Saints perspective, we always feel a bit like the small fish. So it would be nice to actually be the big fish for a change and actually have some of those these what I would consider a nice problem to have.
I think it's also fair to say that our players play on the grounds elsewhere as well, home and away games, so we use other people's facilities in the same way as they'll use our facilities in the future. So, and there's a lot of people who use our facilities in the area that are not from Hunters Hill every week. That's quite normal. They're shared facilities to a large degree, even though we've got care of them. Are there any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a mover, Councillor Miles, Councillor Collins. Councillor Miles, would you like to open up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'll just read out the motion. The motion reads that Council investigate options for the installation of all-weather playing surface at Gladesville Reserve. 2, the Council liaise with the Riverside Girls, All Saints Hunters Hill Football Club, Football New South Wales and other local sporting groups to upgrade these playing fields, as well as other crucial amenities at Gladesville Reserve. Number 3, the Council include in the installation of the new playing surface and facilities in the forthcoming Plan of Management for Gladesville Reserve. 4, the Council write to the New South Wales and Federal Government seeking funding opportunities for these upgrades. And 5, that following preliminary investigations, a report be brought to Council on the options for a delivery of all-weather playing surface. Obviously, the events of last week render potentially for a little bit unnecessary, but I still think it's worth writing to the state member, clarifying timelines, writing to the federal member and requesting whether or not he could even match funding. The all-weather surface, as I understand it, will come at a cost of about 1.7, give or take. There is also clubhouse facilities that we'd like to look at. There's also fencing and lighting opportunities as a part of that funding tranche. So just on the surface as it is at the moment, for anyone who's been down there recently, they know that basically, as some of the speakers said tonight, you're dealing with a sand surface and patched grass, and basically on portions of the field, almost sort of bull dust clay type surfaces. So it is at the moment a facility that's not meeting the requirements of the community, nor the club, nor the other users of the facility. I think that this is a great opportunity, obviously given the funding, but also for council as it moves forward in its plan of management to look at what's going to happen to that surface in particular, but also what's going to happen to Gladesville Reserve. Obviously, having the funds to do what we're wanting to do is fantastic, and it looks like we're going to be able to deliver on this much more speedily than even I thought was possible, and that's going to come with other knock-on effects. That means that the Riverside girls are going to be able to use it for their sports days. It means that there's going to be able to be more training for the soccer club. It's going to mean that they can run Friday night training sessions so that there's more Saturday competitions. It means that there can be summer competitions in the off season. It means that there's potential for increases in the women's soccer, which is important. And again, with new amenities, which comes with the building of new facilities, things like not having adequate female change rooms, which is a problem in other areas of Hunters Hill, like Brady Park. We can address all those issues, and I think that obviously with the plan of management coming up, we need to plan for all that, and we need to liaise directly with the club and Football New South Wales and Riverside Girls to make sure that we're ticking all those boxes. In relation to the ongoing maintenance issue and the replacement cost of the field in 10 years' time, I believe it's best practice, and this again goes into the plan of management process, to develop a sinking fund as a part of the plan of management that then council makes contributions or plans for the leasing of the field to go into a sinking fund that accrues over that 10-year period, so that by the time you get to the end of that 10-year period, you have the equivalent make-up cost of renewing that asset already set aside. So that's how I think we deal with the 10-year lifespan. Obviously, we've heard from the speaker tonight from Football New South Wales that the ongoing maintenance year on year is cheaper than a traditional playing surface, and I'd say Gladesville Reserve being what it is, it doesn't seem like there is a hell of a lot going into that surface, and it has structural problems associated with it. So I just think that this is an opportunity for us to take a position that we're going to negotiate, or we're going to communicate with the local club as part of our plan of management process, given the funds that have been made available to us, that we can perhaps move on the early works of a all-weather playing surface now, in the lead up to that plan of management process, and that as a general rule for council that we are committed to delivering all weather playing surface for All Saints and all the other recreational sports users and Riverside Girls School on that site.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anybody wishing to speak against the motion?
No, I don't wish to speak against it. I've just got a question.
Who's your question for?
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager. What is the timetable for a plan of management for Gladesville Reserve? We've got one coming up for Riverside.
Yes, just need to clarify, thank you, through you, Mr Mayor, just to clarify, there is a plan of management in place for Gladesville Reserve. But as Councillor Miles said, we will need to look at the management of Gladesville Reserve in line with the potential for an all-weather surface and the management arrangements around that. And I would say that Hunters Hill is not unique in terms of playing surface, and there are a lot of local government areas that are having similar issues with their playing surfaces because of drainage and irrigation and ground conditions. So we will need to look at a management plan for the site, but there is currently a plan of management that's required by Crown Lands for Gladesville Reserve. This year we'll be looking at Riverglade, amending the Riverglade Reserve plan of management, just to clarify.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I just wonder, how does this work in with, can we get it done quickly? Because don't we have to amend the plan of management? Through you, Mr Mayor, the plan of management for Gladesville Reserve already caters for a playing field and amenities, and I believe I can update the council with what is contained within that, but I believe that there is also an all-weather surface component of that, not the field as such, but a training practice area as part of that pitch area. Thank you, that's great.
Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor Williams.
Not so much against the motion, but I think, as we've done on several occasions in recent council meetings, put the cart before the horse. I'm not aware, and I can be corrected, that I don't think it's mentioned at all in the community strategic plan. And as we've heard tonight, it's not within the Riverglades plan. And it's not, you can probably manipulate it, but in terms of the true sense of consultation with the community, it's not there. We've done no prioritisation or assessment across council sporting facilities as to where this would most appropriately be. Coming back to the plan of management, there are a lot of other people that use that reserve, and they should be able to have a say as well. So I agree, we can go down the plan of management path, but it doesn't take a holistic approach to what's needed in our community for sporting fields, as far as I'm concerned, and it's not identified in our current planning process. And if this council continues to go and pick things off the shelf and as things get dropped on the table, grants or whatever, without sticking to its planning process and without sticking to its priorities, and without going through a process to rearrange those priorities, then we're going to get ourselves into a muddle. So I'm not saying not to have a playing field that has synthetic material, but I want to know what the community thinks about it in broader, whether it's the right location, whether it meets our priorities. I think we've heard here tonight, there's a lot of hidden things here. If we've got to replace this every 7 years at 1.7 million, it'll probably be 2 million by the time 10 years passes or more. You're looking at, even on today's value, 170,000 income into a sinking fund. That very few sporting clubs will be able to sustain that, particularly All Saints. So what is the long-term risks for council in relation to this? Sure, the area might not be a wonderful playing field at the moment, but for a lot less than $1.7 million, you could returf, irrigate, put systems in place to be able to build a field that's more than appropriate for local sporting groups. If you want to go to a district sporting facility, then you might have to go down this path. The other issues, we've talked about the benefits tonight. We haven't talked about, was there something else said?
Could I just make a note that 802 802, and Councillor Collins has a personal matter, and it was always possible he may need to leave the meeting this evening, and we were aware of that and advised us ahead of the meeting. Thank you. Please go ahead.
That's fine.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, we've talked a lot tonight about benefits. We've seen there's some hidden financial costs in going down an artificial surface rather than maintaining and improving a more natural surface. But this council, a couple of meetings ago, passed a resolution to cut plastics out, right? No straws, no balloons, no nothing, no wrap, all that sort of stuff. Here we are going to be replacing a whole field of plastic every 10 years. And from my professional experience, you need to look at the whole life cycle of something like this. You just don't look at the benefits to the users of it. You look at what happens for the whole life cycle. The energy, the materials that are used to manufacture this stuff, the transportation of it, the maintenance we've heard about, the replacement of it, and equally importantly, what do you do with this stuff at the end of the day after 10 years? It's not degradable. It'll just take big spaces in our landfill. So there's a whole lot of unintended consequences associated with this. And if council makes decisions just on one element of the debate or the argument, then you're going to get into, as I said, a real muddle. So we've heard that it has no health effects. Well, I looked at the research today and some of the government statements locally in Australia state that it does have a big heat impact, and it does create local microclimates, and it does create heat stress in those pavements. For example, here we are. For a synthetic field, it can get up to 63 to 70 degrees C, but a turf field will only get up to 36 to 39 degrees C. There's a big difference playing on those sort of surfaces and the impact on the sport. Also, as I said, it does have a big impact on the microclimate. There's also environmental issues that come out of this, apart from using petrochemical materials in large quantities, is the impact on leaching. And there's studies that have been done. It's right alongside the river. Water leaches through this material, takes contaminants, toxic materials out of it, and can deposit it into the soil. And then what do you do with the soil after you take the field away? Or it can end up into the rivers. It also reduces the opportunity for biodiversity and organisms in the area, because particularly zinc in this material is quite problematic, both in waterways and in the soil and in the local environment. So I'm not convinced we've done all our homework here. Do we want to make this quantum leap at this point without rationalising it against our policy on plastics, without looking at the whole life cycle, without looking at options to get this level of amenity that the local playing field needs in a more traditional way? Excuse me. So I don't support jumping into this. I think we've got, allegedly, or we have got, what's $2 million? Did we ask for it? If I think council's doing its job, it needs to look at where that money's best spent, rather than in terms of where that playing field we get the best benefits. Or does it have to only be for synthetic services? Could we use that money to produce a high quality, as they've done in Ryde at Monash Oval there, a whole new grass turfed area with irrigation, whole thing for probably a fraction of what we're talking about here. And then it just becomes an ongoing maintenance thing for council, rather than a massive renewal outcome in 10 years' time. So I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying yes, because I think we haven't done our homework. There's a lot of unintended consequences here that we need to look at and make that decision in a sound and within our strategic planning context.
Thank you, Councillor. Is anybody wishing to speak for the motion?
I'd like to speak for the motion, but I do have a question first, if I may.
Certainly. Councillor Cresswell.
To the General Manager, Mr Mayor. The $2 million, I just saw a news flash about it, so I really don't have the details. What are the details of that gift?
I don't think there are a lot of details at this stage. I think as I understand it, the Minister made an announcement Sunday morning and for an all-weather field at Gladesville Reserve. And he talked about the cost of that, which Mr. Risley helped us with, around about $1.7 million. I understand the grant's for $2 million. There was some discussion about naming the oval, that the oval may be named after somebody in particular. There's also some discussion about buildings on the site that may be upgraded or improved or changed to help the teams in the area. And I think that was the extent. Can you add anything to that, Councillor Miles?
I will just say, for that very reason, the announcement by the Minister on Sunday doesn't formulate any part of this motion. This is just for the synthetic surface. Obviously it's welcome, but it doesn't formulate part of this. It will probably have the effect to this happening much more quickly, which I hope. But again, the number 4 component of this, I think that if we write to the New South Wales and federal governments, if we write to the New South Wales government, it would be to seek clarification on timeline and quantum and liaising with state for all the details that we need to move forward with our process.
Thank you.
Sorry, so that was the extent of what was announced, so we haven't got any other details. It was an announcement.
Yep.
We will be getting funds. In fact, this is an issue that Councillor Miles brought up before the last local government election. I think you'll find that in the press.
I will say, having worked with Paul, and as one of the speakers said tonight, this was Paul's brainchild.
Yeah, it's been around for a long time. So, Councillor Crasso, would you like to speak for the motion?
I would like to speak for the motion. I agree that we do need to do our homework, and I think that the motion is worded well enough that we are provided with the opportunity to do that homework. It says that we investigate options for the installation of an all-weather playing surface. And it says at point 3, there's just a little typo by the way, it says that council include the installation of a new playing surface and facilities. It doesn't in point 3 say that it has to be all weather. So point 1 says we investigate it. Point 3 says that we install a new playing surface, which I think we all agree Gladesville Reserve is yawning for. Now, with the rumour of a decent amount of cash heading our way, as I've said in the past, we're a small council and we need to be nimble, and I know we have priorities and I often speak quite strongly about not leaping outside the boundaries, but we've got an opportunity here to pull our homework forward a little on Gladesville Reserve. And I don't think there's anything in this motion that actually commits us to a timeline or to an all-weather surface. It asks us to explore it, and it asks us to put a new surface there, which we ultimately need to do anyway. So unless someone would like to correct me, and I'm sure Jim will, but I speak for the motion. We need it. We had a fairly thorough report from NESROC last year on the lack of playing fields in the area. We know the numbers are growing in the area. There's huge development, and outdoor sport is critical to physical and mental well-being, particularly with the inclusion of girls in there. So I commend the motion. Or commend you for putting the motion, and I think I agree with you, but I think this is something that's worth doing our homework on and making a decision down the track when the report comes back to council as point 5 requests.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, my feeling would be it'd be better to defer the motion so we've got a little bit more information on the table. We've heard, 1.7 million. I don't know whether that includes drainage and so on. I too have great concern about. I would tend to prioritise the facilities for inclusiveness as part of this package, and in particular with the growth of women and girls playing in competitive games. I think that's got to be a priority. And we just got to be careful. We don't get stuck in a situation where we get the $2 million, 1.7 goes into an artificial surface. We don't have enough for drainage. Then we still got to get another $2 million in even 7 years' time if things don't go well. I'd just like to see a little bit more information. The other thing that's missing from the motion, in my view, is that we base our actions on what is in the community strategic plan, and yes, community strategic plans, as I've said many times before, are a living document. They can be amended, but that amendment requires consultation. I think it's vital that we include community in this to be sure that everyone understands what the proposal is. Also, I mean, another thing that bothers me, this is another one in a long line of motions we've had over our last 3 meetings, where our Liberal councillors have brought motions to the table. There's been no background, there've been no reasons. I'd like to have a little bit more information. I find it very difficult to be put in a position where I've got to make a decision on a motion that potentially will lead to ongoing expenses for council, and I've got no information in front of me. I mean, I can't rush around and put all that information together in 4 days. Look, wonderful if it comes off, but I think we've just got to be a little bit more careful about the process.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion?
Yes, I'll speak for the motion, but I do have to agree with everything that Councillor Crassoy said there with all the points that I was going to raise. The motion as it's worded is that council investigate options for the installation of all-weather praying surfaces. Point 5 talks about following preliminary investigations, a report be brought back to council on the options for delivering an all-weather playing service. Perhaps we could just change that to including the delivery of a playing surface, just to keep it general. I'm not sure if you would be willing to accept that.
I wanted for that personal explanation. I wanted for that report to specifically lay out what our options would be on all-weather playing surface. I'm not saying that we need to, as a component of that report, necessarily accept it, but I dare say that report would come back with the options that council has, and would lay out, maybe allay some of the concerns of the other 2 councillors who spoke against the motion. But
thank you, Councillor Miles.
I'd like to keep it.
Can we pass it back?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that's fine, because I think we'll be looking at all options. I think council will be looking at all options when it comes back with whatever it's coming back with. So I think the motion is broad enough. I do agree that we need to consider all sporting groups that will be using it, and that will be part of the process as well. And I'm assuming also that as part of this process, because there will be an amendment involved in the current plan of management, that we will be consulting, so there will be consultation that will have to take place.
Through Mr Mayor, as part of considering the options, we'll also include consideration of the plan of management for the reserve, and if there are changes required, then we would obviously consult.
Thank you. And just finally, as a parent of 2 little boys who scrape their knees constantly at Gladesville Reserve when they were playing for the All Saints soccer club many years ago, and I do remember there's quite a lot of gravel and rocks involved in that surface as well. So I think we have to only welcome upgrades of our sporting facilities, whatever they might be. If it does work out that an all-surface playing field is the best option, then that's the best option. But I think this motion will cover all of those eventualities. So I support it.
Thank you. I don't think there's anybody else wishing to speak against, so you've spoken, I think, against.
Yeah, but I just want to ask a question, if I may.
Please, Mr. Councillor Williams.
We heard at a previous council meeting objections to these sort of motions on the basis that it was going to take staff time. How much would you imagine the expenses associated with doing this report?
General Manager?
And have you budgeted for it? And can I add to that? If we're going to go to consultation on the plan of management, what are the costs for that consultation? As I understand it, we're talking $30,000 for a consultation.
General Manager?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Difficult question to answer, Councillor Williams. However, the NESROC, I think one of the other councillors mentioned, NESROC has done quite a bit of work in terms of the sports field need through OTM, and there's been a more recent report that has been prepared via NESROC looking at sporting field reconfiguration. So I'd need to come back to you. So we need to look at what background information we have now and then what information we may need to seek in terms of some of the issues that you've raised around environmental impacts, and then come back to you. So I can't give a definitive answer at the moment.
Would you be happy if that came back as part of the report?
Well, we argued over $12,000 at a previous meeting on something that was quite fundamental for our transparency and communication with our community. And here we are, if we're going to do a change to the plan of management, looking at $20,000, $30,000. Here we are spending staff's resource, and I think it personally, as Councillor Sanderson indicated, it's more than just going back through a NESROC report. There's all these funding issues, there's the sustainability issues, there's the maintenance issues, and there's the replacement issues, which to me, there's no figures on the table as to how all that finance will work. And that will take quite a bit of time for staff to put together. So I'm just saying, I'm comfortable about jumping into these things without having the information, and you can't give me that information tonight.
No.
And it's going to cost council quite a bit to get there.
Thank you. I think actually you didn't speak against it the first time, so you said you weren't sure whether you were against it or for it.
No, Mr. Mayor, I was against the motion, but I'm not against upgrading the playing field, because I agree it can be, it's important to get our playing fields up to a high standard.
Thank you for clarification.
But it's not necessarily synthetic.
I'd like to speak for the motion. I think this is it's a good motion, and it's not a motion to go ahead and do it. It's a motion to bring back a report on the issues that go with it, and that would include the maintenance. You've raised some issues that I hadn't thought of before, Councillor Williams, particularly the heat and the leaching and things like that, and the long-term life cycle of this type of material. So I think there are some things we need to come back to the council meeting with, but as it stands at the moment, with the report coming back for us to look at and vote on in the future, then I support this motion. So if there are no further queries or questions, I'll put the motion. Can I put the motion? I put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. And I think if Councillor Collins had been here, he would have supported the motion too, even though he's not here. We got a note from Councillor Collins that everything's okay. There's nothing, no concern, and the matter's in hand. Move to item 4.1, development applications determined under delegated authority. Move, Councillor Williams. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Second, Councillor Crassoy. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. In relation to this report, again, I've asked many times, and it doesn't seem to happen, but I would appreciate a better statement of reason. We've got this long chronological process of what's taken place, but we don't, in the second column, under matter name, in the first one, we just have a legal works. It gives me no understanding as to the basis for what we're doing. Am I on the right one?
4.1.
I'm on 4.2. Okay. No, I moved. I wasn't going to speak to that one.
All right. So you had me guessing a bit. So I have a mover and a seconder. So mover, are you okay if I put the motion for this?
Oh, by all means. I want to talk about.
Thank you. Is there any further debate on this required? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, against, that's carried. Thank you. 4.2, Councillor Williams, and seconded by Councillor Crassoy. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I won't go over what I just said. I would appreciate, and I've asked on numerous occasions, a little bit more of a summary as to the basis for it being on the list. because you try to work your way through the matters that are dealt with there, and they're just legalese. It doesn't give you much understanding as to where it is coming from and where we hope it to end up. Legal works, well, what's our outcome we're looking for there? What's the problem? And to have a read through, in that case, a page and a quarter, to really still not get to where an understanding of what we're trying to achieve with that, to me, is problematic.
Through the General Manager.
Yeah. Thank you for raising that. And I thought the name of matter, we've upskilled that as per request to give you an understanding what the issues are for the specific address, because sometimes there's no specific addresses. This is a report provided by our lawyers, and it's a summary sheet following the description and investigation and the status update within that column there. It's provided by our lawyers to provide council with an update. There's, as it's a legal matter, it's very hard for the lawyers to provide or predict an outcome, what they're looking for. Obviously, they're looking for the council's best interest. That's the whole intent, and it's basically just a summary.
Councillor Williams.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, but that's not what I was asking. Not the expected outcome of the legal process. I agree, that's in the hands of the courts and the lawyers, but what's the basis for putting the legal action on?
Right.
Is what I'm talking about. It doesn't need to be 1,000 pages, it just needs to be... Some of these matters happened a long time ago, before some of us were on council, don't have the background, don't want to have to go back through and read previous minutes or previous reports of council. Just a succinct statement as to why it's on the list, why we've gone to this trouble, would really help us.
Could I ask General Manager just to comment?
Yep, that's for three, Mr. Mayor. We will look at that, Councillor Williams, and provide some sort of précis or summary of the matter to make it a bit easier to navigate.
A couple of paragraphs to just understand why it's on the list would be great.
Right, thank you.
While I'm on my feet, can I deal with another matter
Certainly.
on the paper there? As I've done my notes on page 11, I'll bring you to that, and it relates to the amalgamation challenge and the costs associated with that. And I'd just like to ask some more questions that come out of what's on the paper here. And my calculation is that our costs were $380,671, give or take a few. Is that roughly what we've achieved?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to take it on notice for the exact amount.
Well, I've just added up what's in the report here. But anyway, regardless of whether it's a dollar here or there, it doesn't really matter much. But the point I'm making is that that includes interest. No, we've had, that was an issue that was raised as being something that...
We can check for you, but...
that is quite significant, because the government sat on its... The government sat on its hands for the last 18 months after the Supreme Court ordered it to pay costs. And that money has not been available to council. And as I understood it, we were entitled to interest on that money until they paid.
I understand we asked for interest. We'll come back to you with an answer on that. It was a negotiated settlement, of course.
Of course, and we talk here about a 70% offer. What was that offer? Was that the offer of 380,000 plus interest, or was that just for the 380,000? Assuming I've added up right, give or take $50 or something. So I'm just trying to get a feel for where this is all settled.
Yeah.
Like, we've just got some bland statements here. They offered 70%. 70% of what? And we ended up with 320,000, which in my calculations is well short of what we spent, less interest, or add interest onto that. So to me, I don't know whether this is a good deal. I don't know whether the government's fulfilled its obligations to provide payment of our legal costs. So, Mr. Mayor, I would really like some more information on this. This is dragged out. we seem to have made a settlement, but is that settlement in our best interest? I'm not quite sure.
Very good. We'll come back to you with more information on that. Thank you.
Then we flip over to page 15, item 901344. It says in the last couple of words, road closure under consideration. I wasn't aware, is that been something
sorry,
we've
could
made
you
a
point us to
decision
the item? I'm sorry.
Yeah, 901344.
Yes, halfway down the page. Serpentine Road.
Yeah, the last. Is it the last sentence I've scribbled on? Yes, it is. Road closure under construction.
Under consideration.
Under consideration. Have we formally made that consideration? I don't recall it coming to this council.
Yeah, I have to come back to you with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yep, I've got more. No, I'll talk to people about that one. That's all, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've got a couple of items to report back on. Thank you for raising them. Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry, I just have one question in relation to page 14, 879374, the St Peter Chanel appeal.
Yes.
The hearing is on the 28th to the 30th of May. Is that open? That's Land and Environment Court open to the public?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other questions? Any queries? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, against, that's carried. Thank you. Item 5.1, the drainage on Boronia 3 Oval. Moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Miles. Good evening, thank you.
John's had an IT problem.
Oh, okay.
Finding deleted emails.
I agree.
You know.
Councillor Miles.
Obviously, Boronia 3 having had substantial construction works and having been a bit of an issue, certainly during my entire time on council. It'll be fantastic for the club to get these works finally done. Obviously, they've kicked in a tranche of money. The feds, through a federal grant, have kicked in some cash, and it'll be really good to get this drainage works done. It's been part of our planning management for some time, and it's certainly been something the rugby club's been conscious of, given that they can't use the oval as effectively as they could without this drainage work. So, commend the motion.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak against the motion?
I don't want to speak against it. I do have a couple of questions.
Councillor Crasso, who are your questions of?
I'm assuming to the General Manager through you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, just in reading this, the figures read clearly and then they get a little vague. And so I just want to be sure that in agreeing to the motion, we're agreeing to meeting $34,200 from our Section 94 funds. But further on they talk about, but if you want to put in water tanks and do it right and stop the runoff issue that has been an issue, that's a separate quote. So I'm just a little nervous about, if we agree to this motion, are we agreeing to an open budget or are we agreeing to $34,200?
Through Mr Mayor, I might ask Mr Husky.
No, we're not agreeing to an open budget. We're the only quotation the process has been run was run by the club. They had 3 quotations, and the one they favoured, the estimate was $70,000, but it didn't include the type of drainage work that we want to see happen down there with water reuse and water retention, and also didn't include a geotech report. So we're not sure how much that's going to cost. So what we're asking the council to do here is to work on a budget of $70,000. However, if the quotations are more than that, if there's additional items in there, we'll be back to give council an update on the project, and then we'll revisit the funding of that at that stage. There is some excess or extra funds over and above the 34,000 in the Section 94 fund, that does give us a bit more flexibility, but we weren't leaving that open at this stage. We'll come back to council with what that exact cost is after the quotation process.
Does that answer your question?
It answers that one.
Yes.
I know that one. I wanted to ask, because I'm aware that on the plan of management for Boronia Park there is a youth play precinct that's been earmarked in our strategic plan and the Boronia Park plan of management for some years now, to the value of about $300,000. So I'm curious, does any of this Section 94 money, is it earmarked for anything else, or is it sitting there waiting to be spent on drainage works alone?
The Section 94 plan, the one that was advertised, had a general heading of Boronia Park improvements, and within that program we've allocated amounts of money. $100,000 was allocated to Boronia Park improvements. In the plan of management itself, it does address the issue of the drainage as being an issue, the underutilisation of that particular road.
Yep.
And it's also acknowledged, as the report says, that the whole plan of management needs review. So it's really a case of saying, well, it's been seen as, it's under review, but this was seen as a high priority in the past. Does the fact now we've got this funding opportunity by way of government grant through the club and the club's own funds mean that we should take advantage of the opportunity to pursue this work now? I guess the judgment that's been made in this report is yes, it's time to do it.
Does that answer your question?
So that would be at the expense of any other things that have also been identified as priorities for improving Boronia Park, such as outdoor exercise equipment for seniors and residents and youth play space.
It's not either or, is it?
Look, it potentially yes, but it really depends what's determined with the revised plan of management, and there's also a new Section 94 plan which has to be developed as well. So there potentially are funding sources for that. It's just that this particular project is here in front of us now with a funding source attached to it, and that's what's elevated the priority.
Thank you.
Councillor Miles, have a quick question?
Yes, through you, Mayor, to the General Manager. The drainage works wouldn't preclude tank storage and water reuse being installed in the future, would it? Because my understanding is that they're going to get the drainage sorted, and then the tanks are an addition potentially later and subject to positioning and systems. But
through you, Mr. Mayor, I might just defer to Mr. Husking. The reason being is that he's actually had direct conversations with the club around the scope of the works and the processes. So.
Yeah, it was certainly the feeling was that the previous work, well, they did some works themselves several years ago, which didn't include drainage.
You remember?
Okay, the quotations they've received this time didn't include it. So we felt it was a good thing to do, A, to reduce costs for future irrigation, and also to prevent some runoff into adjoining bushland, which I understand has been an issue in the past as well. So that's why that additional thing now, if the quotes are right last time, that will add some additional cost to it. And as I mentioned before, it's the earlier question, we'll need to come back to council to prove how that would be funded.
Do you have a question, Councillor Williams? Councillor Williams?
I'm also concerned about this funding at the moment because it is open-ended. We don't know what the true costs are going to be, and I don't think council responsibly could put the irrigation in with the drainage in without trapping and reusing the water, because you're just putting contaminants down into the reserve. My question is, there are limited funds, and those funds, as Councillor Crasoy pointed out, could be used for other purposes. We have $1 million grant. Is that available to be used for any overruns in this process, or is that quarantined for other things? I'm just a bit cautious about jumping into this, because I don't believe the community will accept us just during drainage. They won't accept. We've known all around this table, we've known the problems over the years about the conflict between the active sporting fields and the bushland. So I'm trying to find, is there funds there to make sure that if we go down this path, that we will have adequate funding there to do the job properly and in a way that the community will accept. And I was just wondering, we've got $1 million sitting there, which I don't know what that's allocated for yet either. And I would like to know at some stage. But if we get into trouble with this project, is that those funds available, or is it more appropriate to use those funds and allow these Section 94 funds to be used for other priorities with it? I'm not quite sure how the funds are tagged and what access we have to those funds. It's a long question.
Yeah, it's okay. Just in terms of getting in trouble, let's just say getting in trouble with the project, we'll come back if it exceeds 70,000. We'll be back to council anyway to give them an update on the quotation process. If it exceeds that 70,000, there is some more funds available in Section 94 from the same sources being recommended here. So that would be voted before the project starts. My understanding of the $1 million wouldn't be able to be used for this particular project, so no, separate entirely.
Okay. General
Sorry,
Manager.
through Ms. Mayor, just I guess to clarify a few points. So the report before you is seeking the allocation of $34,200 towards the project. One of the reasons we've brought this forward is that the club has taken the initiative and has secured some funding through federal government to supplement that. Now, the position that the club is in is that they also need to spend that money within time. So if the council was of a mind to, they could choose not to support this project, but what it would mean is that the club would need to hand back that grant potentially. And also the club have agreed to contribute their own funds to the delivery of the project. The Acting Director Corporate Services has said if the grants, once we go through the quotation process, if it exceeds this amount, we will come back before proceeding. And also through Mr. Karepas's area, we're currently updating the Section 94A plan or the new 712 plan. So that gives us the opportunity to refresh that plan and include all the items that are in the plan of management for Boronia, as well as other plans that we've developed over time as a council. So the report tonight is seeking the $34,200 contribution from Section 94 towards this project, but if it does exceed that, we will come back to you with a further report if council's of a mind to support this tonight. But it is to help the club retain that $15,000 from the federal government.
Councillor Williams.
When does the grant expire?
I think it's in here, isn't it?
Through Mr. Mayor, Mr. Husking.
I'm not totally certain, but the club was in conversation with the grantors, eager to get the work started in March or April. And we've said to them we don't believe we can achieve that given we're going to run a quotation process and so on. But as well as that, there was some concern over the actual timing of March, April, doing the work then, allowing for the grass to regrow in a non-growing season. So whilst a lot of the preliminary work will be done around March, April, certainly the construction will be started. They did raise that might cause some concern to the funders, but I haven't heard the final answer to that yet.
Mr. Mayor, in my mind, there's too many uncertainties here, and I'd like to explore some more. There's a motion on the table at the moment.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, I'd like for sure we defer it.
All right. So it's foreshadow. If it's lost, foreshadow.
If the motion is lost, it will be foreshadow.
Okay. All right. Who would like to speak against the motion?
I have a question, if I could.
Who's your question of? Councillor Sanson.
Well, it's through you to
either General Manager or whoever chooses to answer the question, but do we have any kind of a feel for the cost of the future installation of the retention tanks, if that's necessary to complete the project?
Through you, as a rule of thumb, this proposal is not with no retention, but in our experiences talking to the staff, retention tanks are higher in costs.
Higher than
normal.
Yeah, General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, but we won't know that. I mean, as the acting director said, we won't know the cost till we go out for quotation. But again, what's before you is a report recommending the 34,200. If it exceeds that, we will come back to council.
Councillor Williams, another question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the appropriate staff member or General Manager.
General Manager.
Yeah. We've all talked, or we've all mentioned this issue of the community. And I was just wondering how, in this process, council staff intend to handle the concerns of the community, because personally, I don't think the community will accept it as just a drain down into the bushland. They will be expecting a complete project, which will include capture and reuse. So, if we start construction in April or May, the community finds out that we're doing a piecemeal job, how is council staff intending to engage with community and intending to make sure that we do get a complete project out of this?
General Manager.
So I think Mr. Husky might want to clarify the process. Yeah.
Well, the community engagement would happen before the process started, so we would make sure that all the people that needed to be engagements were done. But we do have a quotation process to run as well. So that would if there was going to be certainly difficulties associated with the project and coming in on the cost, that would flag those then. Does that answer your question, or something?
It's a very hard question to answer because you don't have the background of the conflict between the sporting groups and the community, and I'm just very cautious that if we jump in and agree to this without consulting, without getting the community's views, and without having a plan to actually lay out the final part of the project. This is what we're dealing with at the moment is piecemeal approach. We're just dealing with one part. It is not a complete project. You can't do this project without both components, and we're just dealing with one. So I fear that there is going to be some response from the community on this, and I think as a council we need to be able to plan and make sure our community are informed and we engage with them on the issue. If we're only just going to do the drainage, hey, we've got to tell people that and explain the reason why. I can't think of a reason why you would only just do the drainage, not the other components. We're a responsible council that has to look at sustainability issues and has to look at complete projects, not just poorly scoped ones.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'll take it you are speaking against the proposal.
Well, okay, I've got...
So, does anybody would like to speak for the proposal? Do you speak for the proposal?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Prassler, thank you.
Thank you for your assistance with the questions. I trust the report, and I trust that council have given their advice soundly. I've expressed my concerns about that Section 94 money. I think there are other priorities at Boronia Park, and I don't just expect, I know that it's going to cost more than this, if not double. But I'll look forward to when that comes back to council. We can deliberate over that then, because I think everything that Councillor Williams just spoke about will be initially addressed in reporting on the drainage at Boronia, in the fresh quotations being asked for on the drainage and a progress report. Until we know what that will cost to do, there's no point going to community consultation on what we're going to do yet, because we might not do it, because if it costs too much, we can't do it. So we really have to get that next step done, and it would be foolish of us not to take the opportunity to do that now. But I would reiterate what Councillor Williams says. I personally have spoken with many residents who care about that bush there, and that number 3 oval is, you know, it's a point of great contention. We simply can't do drainage there without water tanks. So that's definitely going to be something that's coming back to us anyway. So for now, I say get on with it while we've got some potential money on the table to help us get there.
Who would like to speak against
I'd like to
the motion?
I'd like to address an issue that's on the table at the moment. I'd like to withdraw my foreshadowed motion. I'd like to move an amendment to the current motion.
Councillor Williams, amendment to the motion.
Yep.
What's your amendment, please, Councillor?
I believe that it should. I'll tell you what it is. That we add to the motion that we also include the costs of retention and reuse, so that when it comes back to us, we know what the full cost is of this project.
Number 3 does.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. Read number 3.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'll withdraw that.
Sorry, Councillor?
Yes, I'll withdraw that.
Okay, so you feel it's covered there, do you?
Yep, that's fine.
All right. So who would like to speak against? Who would like to speak against the motion? Who would like to speak for the motion? Any further queries? Councillor Miles, would you like a right reply?
I'd like to just say thank you to the club for being proactive. Thank you to the club for going out and getting $15,000 from the feds. Thank you for the club for investing in their fields. And it would be, be it on our heads if we don't vote this motion in and we lose 15 grand, because at the end of the day, we'll have to fund it. So thank you to the Huntersville Rugby Club for kicking in this money and organising these funds.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So I'll put the recommendation. Am I putting the recommendation? Mm-hmm. Those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Could we record that as unanimous, please? Thank you. 5.2, report on precinct meetings. Councillor Crassoy, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Crassoy.
Thank you, Council, for the report. It's great to see all the brainstorming that was done at those meetings outlined so clearly, and some of Council's responses. I think we can go further, and I know that's in the pipeline. If I can, I would actually like to add a point to this, that Council set a further date, as we promised to do at all of the precinct meetings, because there's nothing in this report that talks about, I know that we've talked about it, there's nothing in this report that talks about following up, and we did promise that to the residents at every precinct meeting.
We did.
So I would like it if we could please add that the report be received and noted, and that Council communicate or Council set up a further
schedule of meetings.
Schedule of
Calendar
precinct
of
meetings.
meetings.
Even if that's no, that's not that yet done. There.
Yep.
Now I'll just speak to that if I can.
Okay,
Yep.
please do. We have a seconder for the motion.
I think
Councillor Miles. Oh, Councillor McLaughlin, sorry, we've got
you
one.
got one. Yeah.
Councillor Crasson.
Thank you.
She just didn't know what the motion was. She was seconding when you stood up, so because you've added the point to it.
All good.
All good.
Thank you. Thank you. I think all of the councils found the precinct meetings valuable, and I think we called it the precinct roadshow, in fact, the first round. It gave us an opportunity to just relax a little bit in the sort of main precincts of Hunters Hill, and tell the residents that we want to start connecting in a different way with them. And we took on board their feedback, and we promised them that we would continue to do so. And for now, until the residents want to take more ownership of that model, even if we shake it up a bit, the last round were done in the evening, and perhaps we might consider some precinct pop-ups in the morning in the main business hubs, or where all the councillors take over a cafe or a hall and people can come for morning tea, or a park. And so we try and capture even more of the community and show the residents that we heard what they said at the last meetings, we've got feedback for them, and we're here to listen again. We want to show them, for example, our new website or something that's coming, and start to show what those meetings could potentially generate, and whether they as residents would like to take that over themselves. So thanks, Council, for running the meetings. Thanks for the good report. That's it.
And perhaps thank you to Annie for her work in documenting it. Could we add that to that?
Names, so I didn't.
Well, I think she did a great job.
She did a
fabulous
job.
Document,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Annie?
Team
Effort, sorry, okay. Councillor Williams.
I was wondering if I could move a couple more amendments to what we're talking about here. I think it's important we have a schedule, but we also need to learn from learn the lessons. We need to learn from the lessons we learned during that process. So I'd like to see some feedback from staff as to, Councillor Cresswell mentioned it, what format is to be used next time. I'd like to also see what are better ways of promoting the events. They're highly valuable to us, but we need to grow the participation. Yeah, so basically those 2 points. Let's talk more about format, because I think we can do it in different ways, as Councillor Cresswell had mentioned. And I think we need to look very carefully at how we promote and engage our community to grow and increase the numbers.
Well, we'll see if we can capture that amendment and make sure we got it right.
I haven't been succinct.
Perhaps Councillor Cresswell might consider adding that to her motion.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
I'd rather not. Can I speak to why I'd rather not?
Just at the moment, we'll just hold it just for a moment.
Okay.
We need a second.
We got a seconder? Is that exactly as you?
That's good. Yes.
Okay. That your intention? Seconder? Councillor Sanderson? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've got to get on with this. It was highly valuable at the last year when we embarked on this. There's always a lot to learn from these sort of engagement processes and consultation processes. I would like to get forward and I'd like to move forward very quickly on getting our next round up and running. And I think it's invaluable for us in making those decisions to really look at opportunities in terms of format, how best we can, because if you're going to grow it, you've got to actually make it relevant and engaging for people. We did a good job. We tried different things last time, but as Councillor Cresswell mentioned, there may be other ways of doing it as well. So I'd like a report back on what are those opportunities. And I don't see the point in having a series of dates unless we actually make a commitment to grow the interaction with the community. And then we need to do that in a different way than what we've done before, or add to what we've done before. I'm not quite sure how there's just a few ads in the paper, how do we actually provide a better foundation for getting people? We're going to go all this trouble. So that's why I would like to have that information when I next make a decision on this issue, because it's so critical and so important to council's understanding of how the community is travelling, its well-being and its expectations and its frustrations. Because I think maybe we've talked about open forums before, whether a modification of an open forum process, something that brings people out of their home rather than just talk about strategy and stuff, how they can get to the meat of things. So the reason I've asked to include those is because I think that'd be very useful when we get potential dates or the basis for having those dates as to how we're moving forward and what the outcomes we're trying to achieve from those additional meetings.
Okay, thank you. So we're dealing with an amendment to the motion. Is there anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? Councillor Cratzel.
I'd like to keep it short and sweet. And the reason I'm speaking against the amendment is I think that what Councillor Williams is talking about here is operational. And I think that how the staff take the feedback from that last meeting and what the General Manager and the staff do with that feedback might come to us at a council workshop or a council meeting. I don't think it requires a formal report. I just wanted to suggest that we schedule some dates so that we could get on with the next round of precinct meetings. I trust the creativity and imagination of the staff and management, and I'm sure that they will raise it at a councillor briefing if they feel they want more input into how the next round of meetings are going to look. I just think it makes the motion too wordy, and I think it's operational. I'd like the staff to just get on with their job.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion?
Amendment.
For the amendment to the motion. Thank you. Councillor Cratzel. Anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? I'll put the amendment. Those in favour? If you'd like a right reply, yes. Do you feel you need to?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I don't agree that this is an operational issue. This is the face in front of council. The community, I would expect, would want some feedback on how those precinct meetings went. Just a compilation of what was said and whatever, I don't think is adequate. I think we need to be able to present a council's view on how we'd like to move forward with this process to give community confidence that the elected representatives are engaged and involved in these precinct meetings. I don't see it just purely operational. It's far from it. It's for councillors to get out there, hear what the concerns are, understand what the expectations of the community are, and to engage with them. So I see this more as a policy council-driven process, supported by staff, but I don't just hand it over. It's so important, so crucial to this council. We as councillors have to be engaged with it. The community need to see what we thought of the process, more than just a compilation, and how we're going to move forward, not just dates, but some of the substance of what we're going to do to make sure they're connected and involved in our community and our decision making.
Thank you. I'll put the amendment to the motion. Those in favour? Against?
That's carried.
Let's try it again. Those in favour? Against? Well, I'll have to use my extra vote, I think, so that's carried. All right. So, do we need any further discussion on that? The amendment becomes the motion?
Can I just make a comment?
Well, just hold on a moment. So, we've got the amendment to the motion up.
So that now becomes part of the
Now
motion.
that becomes the motion. So could I have a vote on that? Those in favour of the motion?
Well,
I think
Councillor
It's just within the body of the report, that's all.
Well, we've got to deal with we've got an amendment to a motion. We've dealt with the amendment to the motion. That becomes the motion. So we've got to deal with that.
We've got to deal with the motion, but we're in the middle of debating the motion, so Councillor McLaughlin wants to speak to the motion on the floor at the moment. She's entitled to, I believe.
Do you have a question, or do you want to speak one way or the other?
It was just a little comment I had. It was nothing serious. So
Okay, comment.
It's just in relation to page 38 where we talk about boat trailers, and I just thought I would mention that there's an issue there about the response is we're currently investigating opportunities and we're going to talk to other council areas. All I wanted to say was that I believe that Northern Beaches Council are leading the way in boat trailer, in solving the boat trailer issue, and I'd like to just alert the council staff to the fact that they are the people you should get in contact with.
All right, thank you.
About boat trailers, because they've got some very good ideas about how to solve the issue.
Thank you.
Including setting up little no parking zones that last for only an hour, so that people can't keep their boat trailers there for days on end, weeks on end.
Thank you, councillor.
That's all.
I don't think we need any further debate on this. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. It's a great report, very thorough. I'm wondering how we break it down and really do something with it. I think we've got some suggestions there. 8.1 is leave of absence. Moved councillor Williams, seconded councillor Miles. All in favour? Against? That's carried. 8.2, summary of council investments. Moved councillor Williams, seconded councillor Miles. Councillor Williams.
See, we've got our new financial person here, or acting, or whatever the role is. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the General Manager. I've asked the question on many occasions. These reports don't really give us much information as to what opportunities or where things are heading. I was just wondering, are there other ways of investing this money that would give us better revenue, better return on this money? Because we've watched it now for 18 months, just sit here bouncing along. I know there's restrictions on what council can do with investments, etc. But at the moment, it's not really growing and adding value to our financial position. So I was just wondering, is there another way of presenting this report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when you say presenting the report, you mean the actual placing the investments?
Yeah, well, of growing the investment.
Are you talking about maybe more longer term investments?
I'm not going to enter into the operational financial stuff, but I was just wondering whether, with a new set of eyes on this, we've been asking for another approach or an opportunity to grow this pot of money, because it's not all
restricted.
That's right. There is a proportion of it that we do get investment, and it just, to me, it just seems as though we're not taking the opportunity. And I was just wondering if there are thoughts as to how we might be doing that in the future.
Well, I can certainly have a look at that and bring something back. But as you mentioned, we are covered by the Act and guidelines what we can do. But I'll take that. If I can take that on notice and come back with something.
All right. Thank you. Happy with that? All right. Any further discussion needed on this? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 8.3, the appointment of an Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. Councillor Crasso, seconded councillor Miles. Councillor Crasso, would you like to say a few words to this? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? Any discussion needed? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 8.4, the Property Advisory Committee nominations. Councillor Miles, Councillor Crasso. Councillor Miles.
I need to say that I guess hopefully this finalises our membership of the committee, moves it forward. I know the General Manager's been working quite hard at getting this committee up and rolling. We had our first meeting last week. We will meet again soon to go through some protocol issues, but I hope after that we start to sort of steamroll ahead and get some of the priorities looked at. So I just wanted to thank the General Manager for her work, and I look forward to participating fully in this committee.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against?
I've got a question.
Question, Councillor Williams.
The reason we went to community representatives, or called for additional community representatives, is that very purpose. There doesn't seem to be any information here as to the background of these people or their role as a community representative, because we're looking for balance. So I was just wondering, it's a very sparse report, and quite happy to agree to them, but I just, again, don't...
So would you be happy to take some information after the meeting?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to know what the background and what potential role these people will play.
I suggest that's probably not for general publication unless we get the approval of the individuals, but we can come back directly.
Yeah.
Yep, is that right?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Did you want to make
So
one?
through you, Mr Mayor, in looking at the 3 nominations that we did receive, and happy to provide more detailed information to councillors after the meeting. But the 3 applications we received, we looked at the composition of the committee and looking at the 3 representatives that the councillors appointed in December. And then of the 3 that we received, we looked at the backgrounds and how that would complement the existing community members on the committee. But happy to provide a copy of their personal details to councillors after this meeting.
Councillor Williams?
Yes. I was just wondering if the General Manager, through you, Mr Mayor, could refresh my memory on the terms of reference for this committee.
Yes. I'd like to speak to that.
Through you, Mr Mayor. They were actually set out in the council meeting on the 10th of December, and unfortunately I don't have them right in front of me, councillor, so can I
I'll go back and have a read of them.
Thank
I just
you.
thought you
I'm
might
sorry.
Have them at your fingertips. And the other issue that was raised back at that meeting was scope. I was just wondering, has there been any work done to identify the scope of the committee? Because we don't want, well, it is my view that committees shouldn't be doing the role of council and shouldn't be out there consulting with businesses or with community groups without getting council's agreement that the priorities and the directions are right. And in any case, I wouldn't think it was the committee members' role, or would they have time to do that. So I'm just a bit concerned about the scope and how we move forward in making sure the committee is focused and not spending time on issues that should be done. We've had that issue with the public transport traffic committee. A few of the other committees, the bushland committee, are stepping beyond the scope of what. So I want to make sure that scope is very clear. There's advisory not doing. Is that the case that you said?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the Property Advisory Committee is an advisory committee, and their role is to provide recommendations to council. But I think, as Councillor Miles touched on, the next meeting of the committee, once these, if councillors have a mind to appoint these 2 representatives to the committee, the focus of that next meeting will be on probity and confidentiality and their role in providing recommendations to council. We anticipate we'll have a further briefing to the council in the next week or next 2 weeks on how we can take forward the Property Advisory Committee, but also an overall property strategy for the council, which might address some of your questions, Councillor Williams.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr Mayor, that probably will. But the issue is that council should be setting the priorities for that committee, not the committee. But like all our committees, we put business on the table and make sure they're focused on that business. Just a bit concerned that we have the scope narrow enough to make sure that we are getting the priorities dealt with first. Because to me, there's a couple of really big issues that will make an enormous difference to this council, and they need to be dealt with first and quickly. Not get lost in worrying about road reservations and whether this parcel of land should be sold off or whatever. There's some real opportunities for this council, and I would hope the advice and recommendations that come back from that group initially target those, and that's what I'm talking about with scope, and that's always important with a committee.
Yes, we'll come back to you. There's a lot of discussion at the very first meeting, well, I don't think it was actually the first meeting, but of this group, about what the objectives of the committee being, how it operate, and then that comes back to council to look at that and have a say in it at that point. So I think we'll be okay.
That answers the question.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay. I was quite pleased with the first meeting, which was scoping out the work of the committee, or beginning to scope out the work of the committee. It's not fully baked. All right, any further discussion on this? Councillor Crasso.
Just a point of clarification for Councillor Williams. All the members of the committee are community members. So the reason we sought those extra 2 nominations was just to add a bit of diversity to the mix, but everyone on that committee, including the councillors, are all community members. So I think that's important to note and to remember.
That's your view.
All right, thank you, Councillor Crasso. Any further discussion needed? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Could you put that down as a unanimous, please? 8.5, proposed merger of the Access Advisory Committee and the Seniors Advisory Committee. Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson.
Could I just suggest a small amendment to this? The recommendation is actually wrong. At point 1, the Access Advisory Committee actually had its name changed to the Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee late last year. I'm sorry, I can't cite exactly at which meeting, but it's
that's fine. I remember. Yes.
And so, if that's going to happen, I mean, there was quite a bit of debate about expanding access to include inclusion. So I think it'd be appropriate at 2 that we make the name of the new committee Huntersville Access, Inclusion and Seniors Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Councillor.
I accept that.
You accept that, thank you. So, Councillor Williams, do you wish to speak to this?
No, it's moved by Councillor Sanderson.
You wish to speak to this?
I will speak briefly. I had spoken to Annie about this. I had hoped that the matter would go back to the committee for some discussion. That was necessary to sort of ease the transition over to the inclusion part. But I expect that this arrangement will work quite well. There is a bit more activity in the Access Committee than the Seniors Committee, so I guess the blending of the 2 will work to good effect.
Good move. Do you wish to speak
No,
against
I just have
this?
a question. I'm assuming
Question?
that...
Who's your question of?
My question is to Councillor Sanderson. You're the chair of both of those committees, so you'll be the chair of the new...
As it has occurred, I'm the chair of the Seniors Committee. Until this time, Barbara Dorsch was carried on because she's chaired the Access Committee for many years. I think under this role, probably as the only councillor member of that committee, that I guess I'll then have to become the chair under our codes of meeting practice.
That's your question? Yep. Can I put the motion? Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. 8.6, monthly report on outstanding matters. Councillor Williams, Councillor Miles. Are there any discussion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Draw Council's attention to the first page, 57, the last item. That was something I brought to Council virtually the second meeting after we were formed. And it seems to be progressing along with an asset manager and a whole range of initiatives coming out of things. But I still don't understand, and it's a question, there's a series of footpath excavations by utilities, particularly the electricity people, whether it's Augustine Street, Paul Street, Mary Street, that were done probably 12, maybe 18 months ago. I'm just wondering when the restoration of that is going to take place, because I understand Council holds monies to do that, and I understand that you need to wait for structural things to settle and whatever, but that's normally only 6 months. In many of these cases, residents are getting a bit frustrated. I was just wondering, and that relates to are these special projects you're talking about on the next page? I'm just wondering how we're going to move forward in dealing with these utility issues.
Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the ones you're talking about have been going on for a year up at Augustine and a few other areas. We'll provide a program to you with timing when they will be restored, the footpaths and the driveways, and we're working on that at the moment. I know, and at this stage, it's priority for that to happen because we're focusing on our next works for those footpaths and roads to be restored as priority. So I'll come back to you with a timeline and a rough estimate of how it's going to be broken up.
Just to reinforce my understanding, we do have funds in trust to pay for that work, so it's not coming out of our works budget.
It's not coming out of works through you, Mayor. It's funds that they provide us in trust, and which we use those funds.
And is that funding adequate to do the job, or do we have to top it up?
My understanding is that they're the funds that meticulously they go through per square metre each area and clarify which area needs to be repaired.
But then we have to put it out to tender.
Yes.
So the tenders might come in beyond what they believe.
Well, that's what our engineers specialise in, and that's what they do. So it's not.
I'm just wondering if there's ever going to be a gap in this process, because
it's not anticipated to go over budget. It's always anticipated to be on time and on budget.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thank you.
Right, thank you. All right, Councillor Miles.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. Just wanting to get an update. I just noticed that the Bonifin Road issue hasn't had much progress in 2019. Could I just get an update on where that's up to, what the next step of the process is?
It's at a point where I need to prepare a report and brief the council to the final outcomes of those workshops and public meetings that we had.
And when is that likely to occur?
I'm anticipating April.
Okay, excellent.
All right, any further discussion on this? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Which one are you up to? Oh, okay.
Which is 9.1.
No, it wasn't right. 9.1. Report to Council's briefings, 11th of February. Councillor Miles, Councillor McLaughlin. Any further discussion? All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.2. 25th of February. Councillor Miles, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Miles, do you wish to speak to this?
No.
Councillor Williams.
I just wanted to ask, Mr Mayor, in the report on the second page, I thought these forums or briefings were about listening rather than deciding, and the second paragraph and the second last paragraph, to me, even though they're worded, the first one is worded differently, they do imply that some consensus or decision was made by council in relation to this. I would urge that we be more transparent about our processes, and I would urge that we refrain from making assumptions or prepositions on issues that are discussed at briefings, because my belief is that the information is then brought into the council chamber and the council decides the issue.
But there's some offending words in there. I'm sorry, I've missed your point. I understand what you're saying, but are there particular words in there you feel has suggested the decision was made?
With the suggestion of including, President, they provide and would be beneficial to residents. Following the briefing, the council's requested that the information sessions So there are actions council asked for, which I would believe should be a formal decision of council.
All right, thank you.
That's my belief.
Take your note. Thank you very much. All right. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 9.3. Report on Council Strategy Workshop. Councillor Miles, Councillor McLaughlin. Any discussion required on that? Councillor Williams.
Question, Mr Mayor. It's a report on what the intention and what took place, but it is nothing about outcomes. I was just wondering when we might be going to report to the community the outcomes of the time spent by councillors and the dollars we obviously incurred on those 1.5 days. What are we going to do in reporting to the community more than just saying we had the meeting? Are we going to do anything more?
It's a good question.
Because there's some vital information.
So there weren't outcomes from the meeting, there were no decisions made at the meeting, were there, for that
No,
one?
but outcomes, what are the directions that we gained out of it that would be a benefit to the community?
So you'd like a further report perhaps, or further
Yes.
enhanced report? Or? Right.
Well,
Could we do that, General Manager?
A report that allows the community to see where we're gone as a result of that time.
But no decisions made at the meeting?
Well, we didn't make decisions. We
No.
talked about issues, but there were directions and important elements of the talks that councillors thought were important for future consideration. And I think that would be a benefit to the community to understand why and what we did at this workshop. Not many people have the opportunity to go to workshops. It's more a professional type thing or an organisational type thing, but the broader community would go, oh, okay, let's spend a day and a half. What did they get out of it?
All right.
When we go to seminars and conferences and things, councils come back and share what the outcomes were, what council could gain from it. So that's the sort of thing I'm looking for here. A report doesn't have to be long, but it just has to let the community know that they got value for what we did.
All right, thank you very much. Good suggestion. Councillor Crassoy.
I'd also like to make a comment, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. I would just like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the General Manager and the senior staff and all the team who put the weekend together. It was really informative. From a professional development point of view, as a councillor with my teammates, I found it very beneficial, and I think that the community are well served by having their councillors continue to strive to better understand the code of conduct and some historical issues and the issues that are currently on the table and how we work together on those as a team. I think that's why they voted for us. And I think we're serving them well by continuing to improve and develop. Norm Turkington in particular was really, really helpful, I think, in teasing out good working skills, and that will serve us well going forward. And also just looking at past issues and, as I say, future issues. So I won't carry on, but I did just really want to thank you and commend the team and the Mayor for facilitating as well. I personally got a lot out of it, and I think my colleagues did too.
Thank you. It was an excellent workshop and put together by the staff. Thank you very much to the staff.
Yeah.
Any further discussion needed on this? I put the motion. Those in favour, against, that's carried. Are there any further business we need to attend to this evening? Councillor Miles.
Mr Mayor, I think it's probably worth mentioning, Councillor Collins had to dash off during this evening. It was for no crazy reason other than he and his wife Jess have just had a baby boy, Jeremy. I just thought it might be worth mentioning to the community watching and to the council that Jess and Councillor Collins have had a baby boy, and it's probably appropriate that I don't even know if it needs to go to a formal vote, but perhaps Council write a letter to Councillor Collins and to Jess and their family, just congratulating them.
We'll do that. Yes. So congratulations to Councillor Collins and Jess. Well done.
That's why he rushed off.
That's why I left us. So any further business? So have you got any questions without notice? No further business. I'll close the meeting at 9:28. Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors.